I want to thank everybody for coming. We've had a fascinating discussion so far. It's been great to sit in and listen to all these conversations. I'm especially thankful to the speakers who've already given their remarks, very, very helpful, very interesting remarks. I also want to recognize my colleagues Meredith and Sonia for putting on a tremendous event, as they always do. It's been mentioned a few times throughout the discussions that we've had so far, that while we talk a lot about how the United States thinks about rebalancing, the things we need to do, how to perfect our strategy to the region, it's also important to listen to the Asia Pacific itself, see how they see rebalancing, how they see working with the United States. And this is a topic that we at NBR focus on a great deal. We recently published a roundtable discussion in our peer-reviewed journal Asia Policy that had several authors and scholars from around the Asia Pacific talking about how their countries view rebalancing, the things that they see, the things that they'd like to see, and shared some of their concerns, which is, I think, a very important and emblematic written piece based on demonstrating what NBR does in terms of both working with Americans thinking about the region, but also working with our friends in the Asia Pacific and how they think about working with the United States. And in that vein, it is my pleasure and honor today to introduce Dr. Dino Patti Djalal, Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to the United States of America, in a position he's served in since May of 2010. He was born actually to a distinguished diplomatic family, and I didn't know about this though, graduated from McLean High School in Virginia, which was fantastic. Got his doctorate from the London School of Economics and Political Science. Many of you in the room know him as one of Washington's most active and effective ambassadors, having previously served as presidential spokesman for President Yudhoyono. We all know that he has many accomplishments in policy, academia, and literature, but going through his bio, I noticed a few things that maybe we didn't know, maybe everybody didn't know of, and I wanted to highlight a few of his other accomplishments, besides those in policy, academia, and literature. Beyond authoring 5 books, including a national bestseller, the ambassador is actually a master in the Indonesian art of Pencak Silat. Yeah, so I don't mess with him. He also organized the Guinness Book World Record for the largest angklung ensemble at the National Monument with over 5,100 participants, which must have been quite a sight. And he also works with us a great deal. He's just a few weeks ago was a respondent at our Pacific Energy Summit in Vancouver. So it's great to work with him so closely and have him involved. And Forbes magazine in an article described him as the Twitter ambassador because of his exceptional use of social media. So as you can imagine, though, I'm confident that he has more than 140 characters worth of knowledge to share with us today. So without further ado, Dino, the floor is yours.
The mic's not working. If somebody can fix the mic, good, nice working. And thank you, Abe, for that kind introduction. And yes, I did go to McLean High School in Virginia, and I had a very memorable time there. And in fact, I had my own bully. And since coming back as ambassador here, I've been going to every gas station in McLean, hoping that he would pump gas into my car. But I haven't been able to find him. If you know where he is, please update me on this. Yeah. And thank NBR for this very important initiative, and I really value the work that you've done, Abe, Meredith, and everybody at NBR on raising awareness about Asia in a very substantial way. I love your products, your books, your articles, your essays, and that I always forward it to the leadership in Indonesia. But you are definitely at the top of my list in terms of one of the best think tanks on Asia. So thank you for that. Secondly, I want to express my, on behalf of my government and people the condolences of Indonesia for the terrorist attack during the Boston Marathon. My president himself actually personally wrote a tweet about it, and we condemn the attack, and we hope that you will be able to bring the culprits to justice. I want to talk today about how Southeast Asia responds to rebalance. And I want to say that, of course, Indonesia is a Southeast Asian country, but my comments would not necessarily be identical to a Southeast Asian perspective, though I think that a lot of it would be similar. So I don't claim to be representing Southeast Asia, but I think Indonesia's view would be more or less similar to what is felt around Southeast Asia. About the U.S. pivot and rebalancing, we believe that it's timely, and we welcome it. We believe that the strategic and economic weight of the world is shifting to Asia Pacific. There's a report by the Asia Development Bank titled The Asian Century. It's an excellent report, and it projects that by 2050, the combined GDP of Asia would go up to $160 trillion, and there'll be an additional 2 billion people joining the middle class in Asia. In an optimistic scenario, there will be no more poor country in Asia, and the standard of living across Asia would be more or less comparable to Europe today. So this is truly a region that will transform, and there will be an explosion of wealth and opportunities in Asia. And as such, the Asia of 21st century will be very, very different than the Asia of the past centuries. And I do believe that as you try to reinvent America, you have no choice but to also figure out where and how you will reposition yourself in Asia in the 21st century, because Asia, we believe, will be the key to your place in the 21st century, just like it is the key to our place in the 21st century. Now, I should say that we in Indonesia really don't call it the Asian century, although we're Asians and we're quite proud of it. My president has called this the Asia Pacific century. Now, how is that relevant to you? It's relevant because it's not China-centric. There's place for the United States as well. There's place for India. There's place for Indonesia and all the emerging powers. It's not a zero-sum game. We believe this can be a century whereby everybody excels. So that is our take on it. We call it not the Asian century, but the Asia Pacific century, where there's enough place for China, for America, and for everybody. Secondly, the Asia Pacific century is relevant for us because we presume that the Indian Ocean, not just the Pacific Ocean, but the Indian Ocean will be an arena of great strategic and economic importance in the 21st century. We're beginning to see signs of that, but we believe this is a geopolitical trend that will continue to grow, and America's engagement in that part of the region will equally be critical in reshaping order in that region. Now, the other reason why we believe that it is timely is because, it's not just America that is trying to reposition itself in Asia, trying to rediscover Asia after pulling out of Iraq and then phasing out of Afghanistan. You know what? Asia is also discovering Asia. Indonesia is discovering China. India and China is discovering one another. Southeast Asia is becoming the cornerstone of countries in that region. There's a lot more trade and investment among countries in the region, within the region. And there's a lot more cultural awareness and links. The pop stars of Korea, not just the Gangnam, but the others, the soap operas, the films, the video games, and so on. There's a lot more links and awareness by Asians toward Asia. And this is something new to us, because before, when we talk about something hip, we talk about the United States, we talk about Britain, and so on. But today, Asia is hip. Asia is the future. Asia is opportunity. So it's timely for you to rediscover Asia the same ways Asians are also discovering Asia. Another reason why it's timely is because if you ask me, what is the most important geopolitical development in Asia, Southeast Asia in the last decade, you know what it is? It's not the United States, it's not Japan, it's China. Right? China has been very assertive in a good way, in a positive way, and we like it, in going into Southeast Asia and engaging Southeast Asia big time. It would probably surprise you to know that ASEAN trade with China is about 400 billion and twice ASEAN trade with the United States. Right? About 2 decades ago, when we in Indonesia think about trade, it used to be only 3 major players: the United States, Japan, and Europe, and China was nowhere to be seen. But today, we trade 26 billion with the United States and over 50 billion with China, almost twice that. Now, what am I trying to say? Again, the last decade, China has been very, very active going into the region. It's been the most important geopolitical and geoeconomic developments in our region. The next reason why it's timely is because Asia is not as static as before. You know, when I joined the Foreign Service 2 decades ago, Asia was just going at a snail's pace. You know, the trends were going very slow. It doesn't change very often. But now things are much more fluid than before. And this is not just in terms of economic growth. One of the most dramatic transformation is the spread of democracies throughout Asia Pacific. There was a time when Japanese Prime Minister Nakasone said that Japan felt alone in Asia because Japan was more or less the only democracy, one of the few democracies in the region. But now if you look at the political map across Asia, there's a lot more democracies, the highest ever, and a lot more, and you know, some semi-democracies, but a lot more open societies than before. And not only that, the diplomatic partnerships and diplomatic architecture is also evolving very fast. There's now the East Asia Summit, as you know, since 2006, ASEAN +3, and proliferation of bilateral partnerships. Indonesia 6 years ago did not have much partnerships, but now we have strategic partnerships with all the major powers, including the United States, China, India, Russia, Japan, and others. This means what? This means that the United States, as you rebalance, you must recompete to secure its place in Asia, just like the rest of us, China, India, Japan, Korea, Australia, have to recompete to secure their place in Asia. It's an open new space for everybody. So the point is, as you rebalance, it's not that America got slower. America never got slower. You know, you maintain a good speed. You know, you have always been a Pacific power. You have always been engaged in Asia Pacific. But the region did get a lot faster. And every one of us needed to catch up, including the United States. And I think that is the significance of the rebalance. How do you recalibrate, reposition, and recompete in the Asia Pacific? So some comments on the rebalancing. Obviously, we in Indonesia like it because we have benefited the most from the rebalancing. You know, now there is a U.S.-Indonesia comprehensive partnership, first ever in our history. And if you ask me how that is relevant, in the 1950s, there's a government, a cabinet which fell just because it wanted closer relations with the United States. It signed a small agreement wanting close relations, but anti-Americanism was so strong that the government fell. Now, the present government was the first one who offered it to the United States in 2010, and it has become a reality. So that shows how perceptions toward the United States and how relationships are evolving. And we're very happy with the state of U.S.-Indonesia comprehensive partnership, and I can say that our relationship are at its best ever. We also believe that the rebalancing would have the most impact on Southeast Asia. Again, I'm aware that a lot of discussions this morning is about Northeast Asia, if I'm not mistaken. But in our view, your relationship with Japan, with Korea, will be constant because they will always be important to you as allies, right? But it's really the Southeast Asia content that will be rising in terms of relevance and significance. In that context, I do want to tell you the good news, and the good news is that America's diplomatic and political and socio-cultural capital in Indonesia is high, and in the region is also high. You saw when President Barack Obama went to Myanmar, the response of the public towards, they lined up and they put his photos on the streets. And when President Barack Obama came to Indonesia, he gave a speech that froze the whole nation because our politicians don't even get that treatment. It was live on TV, and for that 1 hour, the whole nation just stopped. Traffic stopped. People listened to radios and so on. It was very inspiring. So. Your diplomatic, political, and cultural capital is very high in Indonesia. A lot of your products are going to our TVs. Although I do wish that you would export a lot more Oprah and less Kim Kardashian, but that's for you to decide. It's true, and I think you need also to avoid the misperception that. Pivot or rebalancing is all about hard power. I know it's not, and it's not, but there is that misperception that it is. Perhaps it's because at the early years of the announcement of the pivot, a lot of discussions or elements of the policy were about where the boats will go. The Darwin, the repositioning the Marines in Darwin, which caught us a little bit by surprise because we learned about it from the media rather than being told about it. And so on and so on. So you need to avoid the impression that it's all about moving boats, troops, guns, aircraft carriers, and so on. And you really need to project that a great deal of repositioning is really about soft power. It's about trade, it's about more investment, it's about sending more students, sending 100,000 students to China to study, education, sharing innovation, sharing technology. This is very important. You know why? This is how China did it and got in so effectively in Southeast Asia. As I said, China's inroad into Southeast Asia a decade ago, people don't really see the boats, the troops, the mill, so on. It really escaped public imagination, although there's quite a bit of that as well, But what people saw was, again, more trade, more Chinese companies, the CNOOCs joint partnerships with our energy companies, and so on and so on. So again, project more soft power because Asians respond to it better. Also, we want to make sure that Southeast Asia is seen in its own right, in our own rank. I know there's some of us who wonder, okay, is this a function of your China policy, right? Is this a function of something else, your major powers architecture? It may be, but what we want to feel and to make sure is that when you establish relations with Southeast Asia, it is because Southeast Asia by itself is important strategically, economically to the United States, and it's not a function of some other strategic goals. Keep in mind that ASEAN is 620 million people, fourth largest export market to the United States. Our GDP combined is $2.2 trillion, right? And your trade with ASEAN is about $200 billion last year. So these are some of the things that we want to comment on as America pursues rebalancing. Abe, please let me know anytime you want to stop me. Just give me. Yeah.
It's really up to you.
Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is U.S. leadership. Obviously, this is a subject that I hear all the time from our friends in administration and Congress. And obviously, when America wants to rebalance to the region, you want to keep U.S. leadership. And yes, it is very important for you to maintain your leadership. America's leadership is still necessary, but my point that I want to convey to you, and this is, again, not necessarily Southeast Asia's point, but I think it's something that is shared by many, that leadership will need to be recalibrated to the new geopolitical realities of the 21st century. America does not need to lead all the time, everywhere, and on every given issue, right? No one has that capacity. Not United States, not China, not India, not Indonesia. And if you tried that, if you tried to lead all the time, everywhere, and on every single issue, you would exhaust yourself. You don't have the resources, and you would also face some resistance from the region. Leadership in Asia now, as we in Indonesia have long felt, because Indonesia is the largest country in Southeast Asia, and people expect Indonesia's leadership, which we're willing to give, but there are some caveat to it. Leadership in Asia is eclectic, right? Everybody will have their share on some issues to play a leadership role, and I even call it a la carte leadership. Countries can pick and choose which issues they want to lead on based on their resources and assets. So what does U.S. leadership mean in the Asia-Pacific region? And this is coming from an Indonesian. One, obviously, we want greater engagement from the United States and also engaging in the right way. As I said, there are some spaces that America need to catch up in Southeast Asia, in particular, given what has happened in the last decade. I told you about the trade figures. I told you about the investment figures. All this is something that will require constant attempt to engage more with Asia, including with Southeast Asia. And what I mean by engaging in the right way means this. There will be a lot more needs for agreeing to disagree within the region and also between America and the region. We're facing a lot more difficult issues, trade issues, political issues, and so on. I think the capability to agree to disagree while maintaining our bilateral relations and regional involvement is going to be very important. Secondly, U.S. leadership means keeping and earning the strategic trust that you have with the countries in the region. And you know what? America is the largest economy in the world and the strongest military in the world. And you're the most powerful country in Asia Pacific and the world. And you know what? You still need to earn that strategic trust. Every single decade, you need to re-earn it, just like all of us need to do the same. And as you know very well, having a lot of power and having a lot of respect and authority are two different things. There are times that America's image are high, and there are times that America's image are low, right? Which means what? Every single generation, every single decade or so, you need to keep redefining and rebuilding that strategic trust. Indonesia found out that we have to do this constantly with Malaysia, with Singapore, with the rest of the region, with Myanmar, with China, including with the United States. So again, leadership means you have to keep earning the strategic trust. Another part is that leadership means you got to show up. Show up. There's a lot more summit diplomacy. Summit diplomacy now is the trend of our time. APEC. When I work for the president, we have a hard time figuring out when the president can go abroad and take part in meetings. There's APEC, there's G20, there's East Asia Summit, there's this and that. Showing up is going to be very, very important. And fourth, sustainability. And I'm honest with you in saying that as you do this rebalance, a lot of our political leaders call me up and from Parliament and ask, is this sustainable? How do we know that it's not a momentary thing? How do you know down the line it's not going to be less? And so on and so on. But sustainability is something that you need to assure the countries in the region. And last and most important, I would say, America's leadership, what we expect is you can help maintain stable major power relations in the Asia Pacific. Now, why is that important? Because we in Asia, in Southeast Asia, have never had a time until now where we see stable relations among major power. Some of the major powers are at each other's throat at some point of its history. There's always some kind of conflictual relations among them, and we have suffered because of it. You know, this saying that when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. When the two elephants make love, the grass suffers even more. You know, we've lived that. You know, and we have benefited from the fact that America, China, Russia, Japan, and Europe now are having stable relations, and that has allowed us to grow politically and also economically. So we hope that your leadership will be exercised to maintain that stable relations among the major power. I will stop there, and I would love to take your comments and questions. Thank you.
Very, very impressive comments, Ambassador. We only have a few minutes, so maybe we could collect a few questions and just do a one round. Yes, right here.
Thank you, Ambassador. My name is Jeannie Nguyen with Voice of Vietnamese Americans. And I think I noticed that in this room we also have people from the Philippines and from Thai and from Taiwan also, and also many others. So I think Southeast Asia, thank you for speaking, not for all of us, because there are different views from Southeast Asia as well regarding the leadership of U.S., because I think we, as you have pointed out, democracy is one of the values, and we very much value that. And we also value peace and security. And why Indonesia was lucky that you were not at war with China. Many other countries are having disputes, and China has been very aggressive to the point that they take over our lands, our sea, and our livelihood of the fishermen of many countries, maybe not Indonesia. So I think the action, the aggressiveness of the rise of China has preceded the coming back, the rebalancing of the U.S. So we welcome the U.S. leadership coming back, but we also expecting or hoping ASEAN, not just Indonesia, ASEAN, and U.S. and the United Nations to also put on the international law. So my question is, what is the position of Indonesia in supporting ASEAN in promoting the code of conduct in Southeast China Sea?
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Other questions? There's two in the back, and if we could ask you to be rather efficient in your questions.
I'm Helen Rafael with Resources for the Future, and I loved the 2 years I lived and worked in Sulawesi Selatan in Indonesia, in Kota Makassar. But I'm afraid that Makassar itself and so much of Indonesia will be underwater with the rising of the sea, with global warming, with the melting of the Himalayan glaciers that will dry up the rivers in Asia. I don't think the future is very bright for Asia or the rest of the planet if we don't cooperate with China and India and all the major countries in mitigating global warming. And I am amazed that nothing was said here all morning about global warming, about cooperation needed rather than conflict, about scientific cooperation rather than military to military cooperation. And how can Indonesia somehow or other impress upon the rest of Asia that to save Indonesia itself, we have to avert the very rapid rise of global warming and the sea level?
And last one, Allison.
Thank you. Allison Kaufman, Center for Naval Analyses. Ambassador, you mentioned, I think rightly, that the U.S. doesn't need to lead all the time, everywhere, on every issue. I'm wondering, on what issues do you think the U.S. might be most appropriate to lead, and on what issues might Indonesia and the region be most appropriate to lead? Thank you.
Very good.
Good. Thank you very much. Any easy questions or? Good. Ma'am, you asked a very good question on the code of conduct. We were actually frustrated that when ASEAN and China agreed to try to come up with a declaration of conduct in 2002, it took 10 years before it actually happened. And I'm like, have you ever read this declaration? It really was not, it's not a difficult document to sign your signature on. But what happened was when we assumed the chairmanship, my president looked at this and said, this took 10 years, and then there was the danger that it would not be signed in 2012. So my president gave a very strong speech that said, look, enough is enough. We send in wrong signals to the world, and we got to move on, right? So our role at the time was that Indonesia really pushed hard and trying to wake up everybody and saying, look, we can't have another year's wasting time on this very general document. So now it's been signed, this declaration of conduct. What they need to do now is to move on to the next part, which is what are the practical elements if things on the ground happen and lead to tension. So that's what we're working on, and it's a much more difficult document because it's very practical and very technical and also political, right? But China's position has moved. What do I mean by it? Before, China did not want to deal with the other claimants. They just want to deal with it bilaterally. But then they have agreed to deal with the ASEAN claimants, the other claimants. So that's one movement. And after that, they have agreed to move to deal with all ASEAN on this issue. So that's another movement. So that's a good development for me, for us, that China's position in South China Sea has moved in terms of their negotiating tactics. But although we can't know as yet when they will finalize the code of conduct. You're very right. The climate change issue is going to be one of the defining issues in terms of U.S. engagement with Asian countries, because especially a lot of the emitters are coming from Asia, from China, from India, and Indonesia also at one point due to deforestation. And we're quite worried about the rise of sea level, although our place is much better compared to the other Pacific island nations, some of which will be submerged underwater at some point. We have 17,000 islands, so they can move to some areas. So we got some options, yeah. Whereas some countries will be totally submerged. They have to move to another nation, right? But you're right. This is a big issue that we need to deal with, and for us, the key issue is how we guard the forests. We have come up with a policy that states that 35% of Indonesia's tropical rainforest will never be touched. This is very new policy, and this means that it will ensure that the air that you breathe here, a lot of it will come from Indonesia, and we'll give it to you for free, right? Yeah, well, we're dealing with that, yeah. Okay, and the last question is on what issues that the United States can play a role. You know what? Connectivity is going to be very big in ASEAN, in Southeast Asia. I would ask you to, I think America has a lot of potential to help out on connectivity issues, because this is going to be very big in ASEAN, and including with Indonesia. The issue of development gaps between ASEAN 6 and the what is called the CLMV country, although Vietnam is now doing quite well. But the gaps between ASEAN, original ASEAN members, and Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, that's an issue that we need to close the gap on. I would also expect the United States to lend your weight and resources on issues that will most shape the changing landscape in Asia in this century. What are these issues? One is entrepreneurialism, right? This is a tremendous rise of corporate class, tremendous rise of middle class in Asia. In Indonesia, 7 million people a year join the middle class, right? And I said earlier, 2 billion extra people are expected to join the middle class in Asia. But you are the land of entrepreneurialism. You have a lot of resources, knowledge, and universities and curriculums that you can share with Asia. Also, education. I think it's in your interest to make sure that the next generation of Asian leaders, a lot of them have exposure to the United States. I say this because my dad has exposure. He was the first PhD in Indonesia to be graduating from American University in 1954. The president the present president of Indonesia, Yudhoyono, he graduated from Western University in Kansas, and also he did time in Fort Leavenworth. So this is where you want to be. For Asia's next generation of leaders, you want to play a part in extending your influence and exposure to them. I say this because, the bad news is 20 years ago, there were 15,000 Indonesian students studying in America and 0 in China. And you know what it is now? There's more Indonesian students studying in China, 8,000, which is great, we like it, but from the United States it's gone down to 7,500. Right? So that again shows you how you have to recompete for space in Asia Pacific, but also education is going to be the best way for you to affect Asia's future. And lastly is there's a new superpower in the world now. You know that? You got to engage that. You know who's the new superpower? The youth. The youth of the world is the new superpower of the tools that they have at their disposals, their idealism, how they connect with one another across nations, is bringing down governments in the Middle East, something that no other power has been able to do. Right? It's doing a lot of wealth creation around the world. It's the new superpower that you must engage, and I think you have a lot of appeal among the youth in Asia, including in Indonesia. That is one asset you must keep harnessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's a fantastic event. I know you have to go to your next meeting, so we're going to conclude this part and transition immediately to Meredith and Senator Gordon. So thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you.